13 minutes past the hour, and it's time for Press Pass. My name is Mark Masai. This is what we're focusing on this episode.
It doesn't mean because somebody is coming from China that they have it. I don't think anybody would want to be labeled that because you come from somewhere, you have this virus and we need to buy you.
The government has finally responded to coronavirus concerns beyond just press statements, but their statements inspire anything but confidence in Kenyans.
Our issues here, tuko busy BBI na sonko here. Tunakubalia Chinese kukuja, wacha tukufe na maskini yetu kuliko tukufe na virus.
Don't take my word for it. Hear what Kenyans will say about their confidence in their safety in the face of the coronavirus scare. Good evening. We'll also be talking about the concerns raised by the Media Council, and we have none other than the CEO of the Media Council, that is Bwana David Omoyo, on the headlines, the recent headlines that he feels, or at least the body, the Media Council feels, have been sensational, especially on the political matters that is with the Deputy President, the fallout with him and the President, and the BBI. But first, what's more important on this particular episode, and because of what is happening in the country right now, we'll be talking about the coronavirus story and how we should be handling it with all the sensitivity around it. So yes, I've introduced you to the first guest. He's not a stranger to the panel. Next to him is Rose Lucalo. She is a media consultant, as well is not a stranger here, has been on before. And Henry Minor, who has also been a colleague here at the Nation Media Group. Back in the day, though, he's also keen on law, and he doesn't want to tell us who he voted for in the LSK concluded elections. But anyway, that's besides the point. He is a governance and media law consultant, and will have a lot to weigh on in this particular episode. So the first question here, and of course we had a bit of a different tilt to what we asked today in different parts of the country thanks to our correspondents. We asked, do you believe the government is doing everything possible to protect Kenya against the coronavirus? Let's listen in.
Yangu naona serikali inafanya juhudi sana kuzuia coronavirus, sababu hata tunaposikia wale wako China, wale mabalozi wako China na wale wasimamizi wote wako China, wanashughulikia sana wananchi, wanawaambia wakifika hapo wafanyiwe chanjo, na kila mmoja akiingia katika uwanja wa ndege pia anafanyiwa uchunguzi na utafiti, kisha anafanyiwa chanjo kuhakikisha kwamba coronavirus haijaenea katika nchi yetu.
I think the government is not doing much because they allowed that plane to land the Chinese people here. What think if it was on Kenyan people suffering from coronavirus? You cannot be allowed to enter the outside world.
The Ministry of Health needs to do a lot of sensitization, right? Because what we just hear is, the Minister for Health, is just saying this and saying this, but Kenyans are not given enough information about what this coronavirus is.
Shangaa sana kwa ile authorities wa Kenya wenye wanahusika upande wa migration, kwa sababu wasungu kwanza wameshindwa. Kenya kweli tutaweza?
Kama ndege ya China inaweza kuja na wa China mpaka hapa Kenya, kwa nini wanafunzi wetu wasiletwe? Wakuje wekwa mahali wasikiriniwe, kama wana hizo virusi waruhusiwe kwenda kwao. Kama mchina mwenyewe anakuja, watu 240 na ngapi hao wanakuja, kwa nini wale wasikuje?
We have just lived in a country where it's like we don't have any government, because they should be the first people to protect us. So what is their responsibility now?
Nchi yetu imekuwa ni mlango wa kupitisha chochote ambaye inapita kwa nchi yetu. Ukipata ya kwamba sasa tunapozungumza na nyinyi tayari amefungua open ile barabara ya kwenda China na kukuja Kenya. Kwa hivyo tunasema Kenya tuko hatarini, sababu hiyo ugonjwa itafika kwa haraka na itaenea kwa haraka.
Kama ingekuwa possible tungefunga manjia zote zile watu watatoka huko China, wasitulete virus pande hii.
No, we are not saying the government is acting in any of the ways. They are just only pursuing about BPI, and where we have a problem, a disease which is very serious.
It spreads tunastahili kuwa tumebana hizi gari ndege zinazotoka China kwanza, ndio haya magonjwa kwanza yapone, ajulikane dawa ama yaishe.
Side moja tuko protected na side moja tuko protected, kwa sababu before hiyo ndege labda wakati inakuja ama ikifika airport lazima kuna vipimo zinafanywa, na through hizo vipimo ndo labda serikali inaweza jua kama kungekuwa na watu pale labda wangeweza kuwatenganisha, lakini kwa vile wameiruhusu na imefika, inamaanisha hakuna shida.
I think the government of Kenya is exposing Kenyans to this virus, because if you look at all the airlines or all the other countries, basically they have just blocked their entries into their country.
Hatuko tayari kupambana na virusi vya corona kwa sababu ukiangalia hata zile shida ambazo tuko nazo kama nchi, tunategemea msaada na pia tunaenda kukopesha deni.
This poses the question, how prepared are we as Kenya and how much do we love our country?
What is our preparedness? We need more of these signals, we need more of precautions, we need more of teachings than even the political hit, because now we are consuming this BBI and forgetting that there is even a serious problem that when it comes we will lose people.
So many Kenyans are concerned for good reason. I mean, this is a disease, a virus that has claimed at least as of now, 2,800 people, mostly from China, and over 80,000 confirmed cases, with 30,000 of them having been cured or at least declared free of the virus, even after being diagnosed with it or found to have the virus. And so with this kind of story, first of all, I'd just like to throw it to the panel. It's very sensitive. And with that, we have the interest of the public to protect. And the government, especially the Ministry of Health, has been very economical with the information. But we've been working with what we have. But how do we balance that, the public interest, and not causing panic? Across the panel, from you, David.
I think the basic principle of journalism is seek the truth and report it. That is the underlying principle. But then there is a caution that comes thereof, cause no harm. The problem is by seeking the truth and reporting to Kenyans, you may be seen to be causing unnecessary panic and all that. But I think that a pandemic of this nature, it is the duty of the media to make sure you seek the truth. And in an era of open society like now, with sufficient effort, you should be able to get the truth. Of course, we expect government to publicly communicate. All governments are not very, very good at that, but the media by now has the tools to get the truth.
Yes.
Protect your sources, seek the truth, make sure that Kenyans know what is happening, what protections they need, but do not then cause unnecessary alarm or engage in spreading fake news.
Okay, but Rose, as I throw it to you, and if we can look at this headline that is on my laptop here, that is mirrored, if we can have a look at that. Virus, why Kenya is dancing with death. That's going to be your Daily Nation copy tomorrow. And yes, going against the grain, outrage over government's decision to allow flights from China, even as more countries choose to err on the side of caution by walling themselves in to lock out the fast-spreading epidemic that has claimed 2,810 lives so far. Is anything wrong with this kind of headline?
Not by my standards at all. I think that's the magnitude of what we're dealing with. It's a new virus, deadly. We don't know it. We don't know it at all. There's no information about it. We're learning as we go with the rest of the world, you know. And I think it's rather, it's questionable that we would go against what everybody else is doing and choose to expose ourselves. And I think particularly we've been seeing a lot of headlines about our health structures, our health system, the corruption, the greed, the lack of medicines, the lack of, so many things, protocols. We don't even have the system in place, the infrastructure in place to respond if it breaks out, you know. So I mean, I see nothing wrong with that headline, and I think it's time that we actually put government to task. It's not the first time. We've had the same situation with cholera a few years ago. We keep, fudging and fiddling around with very, very, very critical issues.
Henry, with what is at stake, is it our place, and would you call for a call out of the government with what they've said? And we'll hear what they said earlier, you know, talking about it would be discriminatory to not allow the Chinese to check into Kenya because of what is happening right now. And yes, we'll actually play that. But is there that place to call them out when we feel, for lack of a better word, what they're saying is simply hogwash?
I think one is to ask ourselves what is the role of the media. And on the basic, the media is expected to share as much information about this epidemic. It hasn't been declared a pandemic yet, but Kenya was at the forefront to try and help Sierra Leone on the Ebola issue. And that should have taught us that Liberia took a position that was diametrically opposed to Sierra Leone. Liberia, on the first case, said, we have this case, we need help. What can we do to help our systems?
Yes.
Sierra Leone went quiet and continued to say there was no challenge. And it suffered longer and more people died. So if Kenya took medical officers to go and help a country that had hushed and fudged health information, by now we should have learned that we need a set of medical officers that are well prepared across the country from all the entry points, that if you've already managed to get through JKA and you are in Mavoko, then what can the hospitals around Mavoko do? You know, because remember, there would be people transporting you if you want to bring them all to National Referral Hospital, then you'll be predisposing more people. So calling out the government, I think, is important. But what I think we are missing in this process is asking the government harder questions.
Yes.
And the harder questions would have been, how many testing kits do we have, for instance? So that if 200 plus people jet in at JKA, apart from the normal screening, if we were to subject all of them to tests, do we have any more kits left? What of people who might have left China and passed London and now are here? Because you cannot be screening people from China alone. Now the disease is in Europe, the disease is in North Africa. So we need to be screening everyone. And two, testing. Once we make a connection that you could have traveled to that region, we are not denying you entry, but we are protecting the bigger citizenry. So we will test you and quarantine you for 14 days at a secure place. Have we prepared all those? I don't think we have.
Yes.
So when the media, in a way, asks the government, tell us what you've done. We've seen countries, bigger countries like USA, they've turned military barracks into quarantine centers and taken their people there. Not that they are discriminating, but they understand the effect.
Yes.
That in the event we get into that community infection where individuals begin to infect one another, then it becomes harder to manage.
There's one question that has been asked, and you could be the judge on whether or not it's realistic for us to put it to the government and ask them, what, if you're letting people come into Kenya from China, why not bring people, our Kenyans, from Wuhan?
Yeah.
Is that a fair question that we're putting to the government?
It's a very fair question.
Yes.
I mean, I think really that is interrogating the logic of the decisions that the government is making, you know? And I think the government has a big duty, a deep duty, to inform the public. It's the first defense of the public is information. And there's too little of it coming out. I mean, you heard from your clips and the vox pops, everybody's saying, tell us what's going on.
Yeah.
Tell us what's happening. What is this thing? How do we protect ourselves?
Okay.
So much as I agree with Henry, we need to ask harder questions, but we need to hear more from government. It is their responsibility to provide the public with the information to defend themselves.
The response we've had today, and we'll have a piece of it, is Wuhan is on lockdown, so it's unrealistic to get people out. But 45 nations at least have gotten their people their citizens out of Wuhan and back home, and of course into an isolation situation where they make sure they contain everything. Does that betray or speak of our unpreparedness to contain this?
I would like to stick to the questions that the media has asked around that.
Right.
And because I want to stick to the media realm, we do not just have Kenyans in one area. We have many other nationalities, and several countries across the globe have done something about their nationalities in that place, such that instead of asking whether Kenya has done and all that, seeking the truth, facts, what everyone else has done, comparing the facts and making people then understand that what we're being told, someone else, there were more, maybe there were 100 nationalities in Wuhan, 4 countries have done this and that and all that. That way, because if you say, for example, we have Kenyans there and you're told that they are locked down, that's all. You have not provided any additional information. But if you go further and say that, yes, we had Kenyans and Australians and Ugandans and South Africans, this is what has happened to them and all that. That way you are comparing government to government, right? People in a lockdown area to another, such that then we stop the basic saying that we have Kenyans in Wuhan and then they have been given 1.3 million and the Chinese government has said the place is locked down. Find out, it's you know, Wuhan is an entire region, it's almost the size of this country, because China is a country of 1.4 billion people. How many nationalities are in the region and what is happening to them? That way you are able to basically meet the public interest function that you are giving Kenyans an entire, you know, a set of information that can make decisions based on. And you're also challenging, because remember your work as the media is to hold those in power to account. You are challenging, you're showing, letting Kenyans know the Kenyans who are with this and these students or these colleagues.
The reason this is being asked is, and you've spoken of the countries and what they've done for them, and I was looking for this, it's been sent to me, what's happening in South Africa. President Cyril Ramaphosa has directed the repatriation of South African citizens from Wuhan city in Hubei province, China. So when we're caught in this, in terms of what is Kenya doing, it's as if we have given up on our people. Is this unfair for us to
maybe question, when did he do that?
This is today.
Yes, because South Africa is closer home. Now that South Africa has done it, when you bring that out, then Kenyans, okay, so we had Kenyans there, South Africans are coming out and all that. You're building a narrative that yes, there was a lockdown, but countries are noticing that people are getting psychological disturbances, family and all that, and doing that. The whole idea is Kenya will not be the first to do this. So they come to Africa. I mean, the whole idea is bring the narratives, compare the narratives and all that. Allow them, the people who have spoken on TV now, who don't seem to have a lot of information, to know and mention those countries and know what has been happening, because that is your role in civic education. You're letting people know that what other jurisdictions have done, and that way you are empowering people to ask questions to those in power.
But in bringing that, we're basically saying...
That story has been run. I think the first few countries that evacuated their nationalities, that story appeared in Kenya, when at that time it was still very remote. Whether they are Kenyans involved. In fact, I remember our ambassador was in Nairobi and she was saying there was no problem. But at that point, there were stories on what US is doing, what Australia has done, what Turkey had done, thinking through, one, establishing where their citizens are, what is their state, because there are people who had been under quarantine for over 2 weeks, meaning that they were not infected, but were in that region. So now we are even predisposing them to being infected. Because if you were in the quarantine first month, and you are not unwell, and now it is spreading faster, and they've kept you there, then this is what they've done to you. So it's not just about bringing them home. We must begin to point out that this is ideally committing citizens to death. Because the infections are now increasing beyond the earlier point where it was people who had been thought to have taken certain type of food, to where infections are now from human to human. And so I think, yes, I still think that there's need for more comparison. There is a need for even Kenya negotiating with other countries. If US was evacuating people and putting them into a quarantine in the US, why not say, do this on our behalf? Take our citizens to, if in 14 days they are not infected, we will then bring them, because that we have perhaps easier way to manage when they are in your position.
Yes.
We do that with Turkey. Turkey is not too far. So I think we need to ask ourselves, and for me the biggest challenge is to allow this Chinese airline to come. When KQ continued to go to China, it was among the last airlines to make that decision. So it meant that we were able to bring back our people at the earliest moment before this became as bad as it is today.
Let's look at another headline that we can expect to this. I believe you can see it now from my screen. Enemies of the people. This is what you can expect from the Standard as well. I mean, David is here to talk about headlines and being sensational. But this, what do you think about it?
You know, I mean, I think for me, the whole, what is missing from media is just a more proactive engagement with this issue. And I think we really have to look at public health communication very differently. Much as we're talking about, you know, providing comparative analysis and whatever, that definitely is a media function and a duty and responsibility. But really to feel that our government is engaging in a proactive way with this issue and is seeking the information, is bringing it home to us, and maybe even in the forefront. We don't have to wait for South Africa. Why do we have to wait for South Africa and wait for the US and wait for other people?
Yes.
You know, really just that gravitas, just a feeling of gravitas being given to the issue by government is what is missing.
Right.
So, I mean, really, that headline, yeah, it sums it. It absolutely sums it up.
David?
I think the point is all headlines are there to attract attention. What goes in after someone has picked a paper written enemies of the people, immediately it's, so what is this? What are you, who are, you've put four faces, they were supposed to do something, they have failed. It is a failure if you throw that headline and then we have nothing talking to it. But if you have such a headline and then people already explain, we expected this has not happened and all that. So I would say also,
you're in the, yeah.
Yes, I would say also, look at it comparatively. Over the past 10 days, what have been the issues affecting the people,
yes,
and how many did we highlight and all that. So I won't condemn this. I expect it's about coronavirus.
It is.
I'd have to say it is the first time we have coronavirus on the two headlines. Like, have we had it? I know we have had it coverage.
We have
had coverage.
We've had it on, yes.
Yes, but
especially when the government said the students are going to remain there,
yes,
we're not bringing them back because it's safer for them there, yes, where there's more controls.
We had in the headline.
It has been there, yes.
Headline.
Yes, it has.
But
this is a big story.
Yes,
even,
I mean it is a big story. I mean definitely now.
And even when of course this plane landed, it's a big issue.
Yes, I mean of course I saw the plane landing and it was a big issue and all that. The point is, after you've done this, because you're drawing attention to a matter that is being ignored or treated with, let's say, with not much attention, that is important.
With
most
kid
important,
gloves.
yes, and most important is bring out. You have declared them enemies of the people, isn't it? You explain that the health minister in South Africa has done this, the Kenyan has done this, a neighboring country has done it, and so you are simply comparing. The whole idea is that you are not calling, you're not name calling and all that. You're presenting facts and saying that in an ideal situation, this would have been done. That way you are safe saying that we provided facts for people to judge, and with that we have drawn a conclusion.
Yes.
So I wouldn't condemn the headline as per se, but as long as you have put content to delivery.
I believe we'll see that tomorrow. Yes, real quick before we take the break.
I also wonder, because we're not seeing enough from the specialists. I don't read enough in the papers from the people who actually know what's going on.
Yes.
You know, there's a lot of at the political policy level commentary, but Kenya has some of the best, the most qualified epidemiologists, virologists, microbiologists. A lot of vaccine and virus research is going on in Kenya, international research. Why are we not hearing from people who actually know about what's going on? And I think that maybe is a place where media can go when there's no information from others.
Okay.
I hope they will speak.
Yes.
But it's a place to go.
Some have spoken, but those who are attached in anywhere with the research groups that are under the government or in collaboration with the government have somewhat been sworn to silence, because this information needs to only come from the Ministry of Health. So far, that's how it has been treated. But you've spoken of being proactive as media.
But I mean, in a way, they're returning us to the place that we're trying to go away from.
Yes.
You know, the place where information is not at a premium, We pay for that research.
Right.
We pay for those institutions, and we pay for them to help us through situations like this one.
Yes,
you know, and
before, I think we must be careful what you said about information coming from one channel. You must be careful not to gag yourself.
yes,
Who has stopped you from interviewing anyone? And there's
No one has. No one has.
Yes.
And I tell you this because we've asked them.
Right.
Yes.
Yes, we've asked them,
Yes.
whether it's from Kemri and what have you.
Yes.
And they would be telling you something off record.
Yes.
But when you bring out the mic or the camera, they
Yes.
say, no, I can't speak. Just this one directed to
Yes.
the government
So,
spokesperson or the Ministry of Health.
Did we run that off record?
No, you don't. If they don't want you to go off record, you can't. There's
Well,
a lot of trust and
I
respect.
think
and you know
one
this.
we must ask ourselves, there is a question about accountability, and a question about accountability cannot be, you can't treat it in any other softer way. It is about us doing an investigation or an audit on our preparedness and making a case. Are we prepared or we are not?
Okay.
And in that, if the CS or the PS have said we are prepared, and in your audit you find out that we are not prepared, there isn't much you can do to kid them around. You just have to call them out for what they are.
All right.
But
Let's
there is
see.
also a place for deliberations.
Okay.
You see, there is a place that before we arrive at audits, we are offering a platform for discussions,
Okay,
where people hold different views.
Let's see if that will play out in the second part of this show, because we have an expose of sorts, because we have an exclusive interview with one of the workers at JKIA who speak of the conditions at the JKIA and whether we are prepared. You'll be shocked with what we'll show you. Stay with us.
Agatha.
The one and only.
You can never afford to provide the girls the kind of lifestyle we can offer.
Sure, but not everything in life can be bought with money.
Come on,
Wait! She's not Agatha!
My sister, let go of Carrie! Before you start a fight, make sure you're fighting the right person. I can sue you for what you did.
150,000 Kenya shillings for cash buyers or 175,000 Kenya shillings for installment buyers. Join us for our site visit on 29 February 2020. SMS plot to 21595 for more information.
The blind man told police officers, afade mimi sijawahi ona bangi maisha yangu yote.
Hizo ma award zikafanya watu waanze kuimbia award badala waimbe the word.
Mimi mkinichagua mtaona miujiza.
Anajifanya siku hizi.
Kimbia mara moja.
Naogopa Mwenyezi Mungu na uji moto peke yake.
Hiyo si bangi.
I'm a child
You are holy.
I found out. You really indeed had a colorful past, but yours is colored black.
I know that someday you're going to ask for help from someone like me.
Accept that as my gift for being our partners.
I rarely fall in love, but when I do, it'll be forever.
You had a grandmother who took care of you, and yet you grew up into a lying, deceitful, cunning thief.
That isn't true! Oh my! Hey! He took my phone!
Hold this!
Julio!
Hey!
Help! There's a thief!
With Lipa na M-Pesa, you get more.
Lipa na M-Pesa.
Every 100 shillings spent on Lipa na M-Pesa earns you an entry into the draw. Do more with Lipa na M-Pesa.
It's delicious.
Welcome back. It is emerging that the country is exposed to the coronavirus more than the government would like to admit. Various sources who are in direct contact with the situation at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport and whose versions of the situation are independently aligned say they are not trained to handle the situation, do not have the proper protective gear, lack the number of effectively handling the situation, and add that the staff at the airport are living and working in fear for their own lives. Helen Aura gives us the details as shared by one of the staff members at JKIA.
The reality of 239 passengers on board Southern China Airlines plane disembarking at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport on the morning of 26th February 2020 has not only raised concerns but brought to the fore the risk Kenyan is exposed to. This comes right from the preparedness or lack of it thereof of the personnel on the ground.
The level of preparedness at JKIA is wanting. This is because one can't really say there is much in place, even for the grooming companies, the person who drives the cargo and the person who ferries the passengers in the buses. The only thing you can say they are provided for are the masks and the latex gloves.
The government says that over 600 personnel have been deployed to attend to the screening, but sources indicate that they are actually about 60 on the ground. They are comprised of only one medical doctor, nurses, clinical officers, and public health officers. The lead on such a situation should be infectious diseases specialists, but there are none in the JKIA team, which is sagging under the weight of understaffing. There are more gates than officials, leaving them very thin and less efficient. With each shift having about 12 people at work, there are lapses where some people gain entry without being screened, and some staff, such as cleaners and helpers of persons with disabilities, access planes without the relevant gear and get back into the airport. It gets worse.
In terms of disaster and epidemic training and drills, we are at zero. We have not been trained for the situation.
This video taken at the airport shows how the screening process is conducted upon arrival at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. An official is seen hurriedly screening passengers. The National Youth Service officials are also at hand to aid in crowd control. They are all masked. But there is a problem. They are all in surgical masks, which do not shield them from getting infected. The ideal masks are called N95 masks or respirators, which are ideal for this case. Sources indicate that there are some in store but are not being issued to everyone. The masks are being issued to staff who are asked to reuse them for about a week, yet they should be discarded after use. In regards to equipment, there are 2 thermal scanners, one of which is not working. There are only 6 thermal guns expected to be used to screen the thousands of travelers, and they are not always at hand to deliver.
We had a case where the thermometers failed to work. They overheated. So even what the health ministry is purporting that they were screened and they were okay to mingle with the people in the societies, the passengers, is just a hoax.
One of the ways of steering clear of the virus is washing of hands and general hygiene. At JKIA, water is switched off at midnight and back on at about 4 a.m. This leaves even toilets without running water to flush or wash hands, facilities that are shared by travelers and staff alike. NTV has been seeking access to the airport to film the screening process for weeks, but keeps getting ping-ponged to different offices, none of which has granted access. The details in this report, which is not exhaustive of the situation and exposure, may just explain why. Helen Aura, NTV.
Rose, as you've been watching?
Oh, very frightening. Very frightening. I mean, I think... I think we really need to reach a stage where we're not, I think Henry said earlier, let's not be afraid of our weaknesses, because when we discuss it, when we dialogue, when we bring it to the fore, you can begin to engage with issues and, you know, put in place counters to it, you know. But we have a history of always running to the defensive, always being on the defensive about any illness breaking out, and it's not something that started today, you know. I mean, go back to any outbreak, HIV/AIDS, talk about Ebola, talk about everything. Every time we have an outbreak of disease, Kenya's position tends to be defensive, you know. And I think it would be useful for media really to engage on this one, because whatever we can push in terms of getting infrastructure and getting movement and getting, you know, public communication flowing, will serve for the future as well. Let's get out of this defensive mode. It doesn't help anybody.
Always on the defense. David?
Number one, kudos to NTV for getting the story out. I started by saying you have a single duty. Seek the truth and report it. Cause no harm. I know that the video was not easily acquired. The interview is not easily acquired. That's exactly the role of the media, that we have a big pandemic across the globe. We can't get information, but because we have established media houses, we seek and bring the facts. What we need to see now is, and that's the problem, unfortunately, of the government, is maybe they'll talk about, no, water is never switched off. You know, some of the facts that were saying, no, we have more than 2 machines and all that. Then you wonder why if questions have been sent to them, why did these answers never come? But when the media goes out of its way to bring such facts to public, because you can imagine if we had the virus in this country, how many people would be affected. Basically, every corner of this country would be touched. Right. And if we don't have enough masks in Nairobi. I saw on the BBC documentary yesterday that a few people in Nairobi were preparing to export masks back to China because there's a high market there. So the whole idea is yes, it was on BBC yesterday. Yeah. So the whole idea that the media has gone out of its way, despite being denied, to simply bring and say there is a crisis happening, and you have a duty to protect Kenya. I think for me, that is kudos to the media.
Henry, when someone speaks to us in confidence like this, at least to bring out the truth, and we have many who would still want to talk to us, just to tell the country we are in a mess, how do we ensure we protect them as media? They're talking to us.
I think there are 2 or 3 things that need to be done. One is internally, before a reporter is out onto such a process, there must be a protocol on protection of sources, and it must be discussed, because once you've tried once or twice and you notice that there is a barricade, you're going into a process that could cause harm to the person who's volunteering as much information. So I want to believe that internally there is a safety protocol for sources, and 2, that once you've done the story, you will go back to that source with a view to offer them any other support that may be required.
If they're fired?
If they are fired, then you need to be able to help them litigate, because they went out of their way to offer you information that has helped you to remain who you are. Yes. So that's why I'm speaking about a sources protocol. So you begin to know that there are people who would give you information in confidence, and that enhances your credibility, it enhances your sales, but they could be predisposed to harm. And you have a duty not to let them fall into the harm unmitigated.
Right.
So a question could be that you want to pull it back to Airports Authority, you want to pull it back into civil aviation to say how many staff are you punishing because of giving information when you didn't. And that becomes another story you must sustain to be able to protect those people. Number 3 is to liaise and work with other people who can protect those as critical sources of information, because you could even speak to Parliament, because this is a big question. How prepared we are is a national sovereignty issue, is a national security issue, because a country can be wiped out by this disease. It's not a joke. So if we need certain people protected, then we need even Parliament to step in. Remember, we are speaking of this. The first doctor who captured this virus ended up dying.
Yes.
And that's what secrecy can do. That if China had dealt with that doctor differently and took the information he was sharing as a warning that this thing could get out of hand, perhaps he would not have died. Perhaps we would not have had as many people. So secrecy in certain situations does not help. And I think that's what Rose is reiterating. There are times when secrecy helps, and there are times when secrecy doesn't help. And I began by pointing out the Guinea, Liberia, Sierra Leone kind of situation. 3 countries affected by same pandemic, one nearly annihilated, others a bit more stable and losing fewer people because they dealt with the information differently. If the ministry does not have enough health communicators, then there are experts in this country that are helping other countries. I know of health communication experts who are there for Liberia, who are there with mobile phone companies to help in mapping information so that you didn't need people to go there physically, but using call logs, they were able to even trace where people are. We could have done that with our students in Wuhan to get to know to specific locations where they are and information being picked for purposes of offering logistics. So this is not strange. Kenyans are helping all over the world to do this, but we seem like we are totally lost. We don't know what to do. And this is not for lack of experts.
In dealing with the students and getting information from, there has been the fear that perhaps some of them who are under scholarships in Wuhan would lose them if they were to say something that would go against,
and that's why you don't need to talk to the student.
Yes.
A mobile phone triangulation process, for them to just send a message, would tell you, we have 200 in this situation. I've been under quarantine for how long? I'm well, but the other person is unwell. This is the number we are. I'm on scholarship, but can I be able to defer? Because there is no learning going on. So you need to survive first to secure the scholarship. Otherwise, you secure the scholarship in death. It's not helpful.
We are talking about the government being prepared for this, and not to sound alarmist or sensational, but in the event that this actually breaks out and there happens to be a case here in Kenya, for the safety of journalists, first of all, are we even prepared in covering this particular issue?
You will notice when the plane landed, the China plane landed, we had other, I think a few foreign, either journalists or other people, agents there, and they had masks and a few protective clothing on. The Kenyan guys there were just generally there in that video of the Chinese plane landing. So it's about the way you say, we have a shootout down at Dusit, we have a bulletproof and all that. When you send people to cover this, have you bought the protective clothing? Because protective clothing is not just about helmets and bulletproofs. It's these, the gloves and all that. So it's an idea of preparedness in the broadest. Now we're trying to prevent the virus and all that. Make sure that the journalists are prepared, because they will be required to go to the places and provide information. Number 2, I've seen other countries now already telling people what to do. In case you are near this, they have people have been told to stop handshakes, don't get 2 meters close to someone, don't get close to someone, that it does not matter and all that. I think we need to engage a lot in teaching even the media, because in case this happens, and I'm not sure we are going to escape, because if Kenya is being ranked as the 13th most probable countries by WHO. Well, I'm not wishing, but we will be. We should be by now be looking at what we call scenario building.
Yes.
Because in all other crises, people already go to scenario building, scenario 1, scenario 2, and scenario 3. You do this in this media house all the time when you have big news coming. I would anticipate that credible media house will already be at scenario building level.
But have you heard of that happening? At least it's not happening here.
Well, I haven't heard about it. So what I'm saying is that of course, I'm happy that it is the headlines across tomorrow.
Yes.
Number one, at least we don't have politics. Number two, therefore, that we have, because for anything to qualify to headline, it means that it's a big matter, isn't it?
Yes.
So number two, therefore, is that how are we prepared to cover that?
Okay.
And that now calls for, because whenever we have elections coming, or the referendum, or a big event in town, the president is visiting, you do scenario 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
So now that you have put it, it has qualified to be the headline. I think naturally it should qualify into scenario building, preparedness, and all that.
And I want to insist that information is the first stop.
Yes.
It's not just information for journalists. Every single Kenyan should know, every citizen should know and be aware and be reminded. It should be in schools, it should be in teaching institutions. It should not, by the time a journalist is going to cover a story, this should be deeply ingrained in them as a Kenyan. Forget about as a journalist. As a Kenyan, everybody knows that this is what I must do, this is what I'm going to face. And that's why, again, I think public communication, public health communication, it is our defense. It is the medicine that we need right now.
But we're playing with it. Yes, sorry to interrupt. I need to take a break here again. We'll conclude this matter and then get into the headlines that David Omoyo has a problem with across the board. We'll see what his beef is, but we'll have to listen to what the government said about its preparedness. Stay with us.
Eldora Technical Training Institute (ETTI) prides itself as a student-centered institution committed to nurturing and growing careers. Enrollment for May and September intakes is ongoing. Apply now. Eldora Technical Training Institute. Growing reputation.
On the 29th of February 2020, Seeds of Gold invites you for a farm clinic at the TAC Center behind Zion Mall in Eldoret. The theme is Climate Smart Agriculture, fostering resilience for food security. Please join us for an in-depth discussion on wheat, maize, poultry, horticultural and dairy farming, and mechanization of farming process. For more information, please contact us on the details on your screen.
It's 8:52 in the morning. Living with S is the perfect destination for information, entertainment, and laughter, bringing a refreshing perspective to Kenyan television every weekday morning. Let's get revving. Welcome to Sun City Resort, South Africa. We create an environment that leads to moments of unpredictable fun that reflect on everyday people, celebrities, and experts in various fields that touch on your day-to-day lifestyle. So why not join me, Sharon Mundia, every weekday morning from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. as I seek to liven up your morning.
All right, let's conclude this matter, although it's something that we need to talk about throughout the week, set the agenda on it, and make sure that we get the answers from the government. Speaking of which, for the first time, we had a proper press conference, not just the press statements that were being sent out by the Ministry of Health. And today, through the Health Ministry's Chief Administrative Secretary, Dr. Rashid Aman, they said that it would be answering some of the questions in terms of why don't we ground all flights coming in to Kenya and stop them, those from China at least, coming into Kenya. And he said it would be discriminatory to stop flights from China at the moment. And this just comes a day after the China Southern aircraft with 239 passengers landed and caused many questions being raised. And this also came after the Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary, Rishalo Mamo, was answering to parliamentarians earlier on Kenya's preparedness on the whole situation. Let's listen in.
It doesn't mean because somebody is coming from China that they have it. I don't think anybody would want to be labeled that because you come from somewhere, you have this virus and we need to bar you. It's dangerous to do that. Yet, we must always be careful that we are protecting our people as well. In the meantime, we have 11-bed capacity at Kenyatta National Hospital. And I think that is enough for us right now to deal with any situation unless we get an increase in numbers. But we think we can meet that target and have that facility ready.
That flight was dealt with in accordance with WHO guidelines. Those who were on it were monitored and had been asked to self-quarantine.
Discriminatory to the Chinese and the self-quarantine issue, that has been on the lips of many people. You laughed as you were listening to this.
I think that therein lies the challenge the country is going through. Because I followed this and I asked myself, earlier today, Israel did not allow a flight from South Korea to land. It turned it back. So would that mean that that flight had not met the WHO standards? No. The WHO standards are minimum, but a country that is protecting its citizens heightens surveillance. And I think we are mixing two things here. We are not saying that anybody should be discriminated.
Yes.
We're just saying that those who have a higher likelihood to have the virus must be isolated. And until they have proven that they don't have the virus, should they be allowed to carry on with their daily lives? Because even Kenyans in China, who nobody knows if they have the virus, have been quarantined. So this is not discriminatory. This is not retaliatory. It is just taking the necessary surveillance mechanism to ensure that. Two, I hear the CAS talking about 11-bed capacity. So supposing in that screening of 239 people, you got 50. Remember this cruise ship that had 60 people plus of different nationalities. One cruise ship. Yeah? So there is a high likelihood that that ship had followed WHO protocols. But infections have now moved to human to human. So somebody might have gone through a screening in China at its dormancy level, and now it's manifest.
Okay.
So I think as a country, we are speaking at each other and perhaps shifting blame. We need to think collectively that if this virus is in town, it spares no one. It is a virus that does not discriminate. It will hit the rich, it will hit the poor. The poor would suffer more because certain basics are not there. You know, we're being told about basics of cleaning, running water and so. But we know there are places in town where there's no water, you know, where the sewer is running all over this place. So what are we doing to ensure that our situation would not be as grave in the event that there is an infection? So I think Parliament needs to step up more. Media needs to equally step up. I appreciate and seeing what the headlines are going to be tomorrow.
Yes.
I think this is what we ought to do. But the media too ought to be more prepared. We have our own reporters our own editors must think through this, because this is not an ordinary virus. It could wipe out a newsroom. If we took a person to the airport and they came back infected, they will wipe out their own family, it will wipe out the newsroom. So we also need to be extra cautious that even as we speak about what the state is doing, we have a responsibility. Occupation and health safety for our own must be up as we get into this.
As you wind up on this and react to what the government has said, Rose, also what you've experienced in the past regimes.
Yeah, I mean, first to go back to the statement from WHO, I mean, I had a look at it, and I think it's wrong to just pick out what they said about quarantine and leave the rest, because they were very clear that each country needs to think for itself.
Yes.
It says it must be setting specific, it must be reviewed constantly and monitored, you know, and we shouldn't leave that out. So if you're at high risk, you don't necessarily have to adopt the minimum standards of WHO, you know. There's countries that don't trade so much with China, you know. They don't have planes coming from there so often, you know. I mean, they can probably go with the minimum. We cannot, you know. I mean, we have very, very ingrained links. And again, I think when I think back over the years, I remember a time when, for example, when we had cholera outbreaks, and messaging was ubiquitous. You couldn't go anywhere without hearing a message about cholera and what you should do about it, you know. You'd have barazas in the village, you'd have at funerals, it would be there, in schools it would be there, you know. We need that kind of approach, multi-platform, multilingual, multi-setting, multi-audience, you know. Yes. Making sure that anybody and everybody understands this thing is out there, what are the dangers, and what can you do to protect yourself. That, I think, is what is the big missing. I mean, I've focused today a lot on information because it's the only thing we have right now. It is the only thing we have to protect ourselves.
All right, your response to this?
I think going back to our role, because apart from the newspapers and TVs that we have no less than 200 radios across this country speaking in different languages. It is important by this time we start crafting messages that will talk to people. Like, I mean, the basic hygiene matters, because I think wash your hands and avoid contact and all that, because we are anticipating when we would have a cholera outbreak in one part of the country, the messaging would be across the country, because, you know, buses travel across and all that, and that will happen if we had the virus outbreak in any part of this country. It's impossible to lock down a country of ours, which is largely of hunter-gatherers. People walk across streets and forests and all that. You can't lock down people entirely in this case. So I would think that by now we should be concentrating on messaging and all that. I will expect, I know we're talking about it soon, that I can bet that we're going to see action from tomorrow. And you know why the reason? Because the media today decided we are public watchdog and we're going to question.
Yes.
That is going to see. But otherwise, if we spoke about certain things that we like talking about, it was going to be any other press conference. So by doing that now, demand public information. There is a lot of investment in public information and all that in different languages. Let's see a similar investment, and the media should ask for that.
And here you have it, what you can expect, at least some of the dailies. The coronavirus, only 11 beds are ready. The Star, Daily Nation, virus, why Kenya is dancing with death. And the Standard there, the enemies of the people, with the main officials who are in charge of key ministries. And yes, many questions to them, very little answers, or at least not as many answers as would be desired. This is a story that we will stay with till we get all the answers and make sure that the government is accountable and make sure that they protect the interests of our nation first. As much as the CAS was saying that we shouldn't discriminate against anyone, the Chinese or anyone landing in Kenya, Henry has said something very important here, that coronavirus does not discriminate as well. And yes, the implications, ramifications would be very dire. Let's now turn, we've looked at these headlines that we can expect for tomorrow, but something else that's totally different in terms of headlines and the focus it has been in the last 2 weeks. And David is probably, or has been, fuming in the last 2 weeks. He will tell us why. The situation with some of the headlines, and we'll show them. We have the ones for the last week and the previous week and this past week so far to today, and what the focus has been. If we can, please, let's show it. And yes, David, tomorrow there will be a press conference, or at least there's a press release today that we see, and seek the truth and report it, cause no harm is the heading here. And just the first para, the Media Council of Kenya has noted with concern on emerging trend where media coverage of national issues displays a betrayal of public interest and violation of the code of conduct for the practice of journalism. Sadly, after a close and critical analysis of media content in the last few months, the MCK has established a worrying trend of screaming headlines without corresponding content, alongside multiple repetition of headlines over a short period of time without offering additional information and sources. What's the problem exactly? I see the code of conduct for the practice of journalism quoted here. Where exactly has the media gone wrong? And we'll show you the headlines. If we may, please, to my producer, just show them the headlines that they're talking about. Go ahead, David.
The second paragraph, of course, in that statement spoke about, we highly respect that editors have a discretion to carry the information they want. But let me start by saying that there's an African saying that says, even if you pretend not to hear me, I am glad you have heard. Tomorrow, we have no political headline across all newspapers in this country. That will be the first to have all three papers not having any politics in a very long time. So you may say, okay, there's all this noise and all that, but I know you have heard. The fact that suddenly we have, because coronavirus didn't happen yesterday, but suddenly we have picked up the whole matter. The whole idea is, it is usually very hard, especially the Daily Nation or rather other papers, very hard to not just be on the headline, to get space in the paper. And so if you happen to have the same item on the headline continuously, it's principally because we call it a developing story and additional information. If you consistently look at certain headlines of how we have repeated certain topics, I mean, pick 10 days, for example, and see how maybe you have the same topic for 5 days. Would you say that we had 5 different topics coming up, or we had 5 new developments, the same story? The whole idea is that, and if you were to list the priorities of Kenyan, we use whichever method you want to use, would you then say that we have one item was very consistent, a problem of Kenyans, 10 times more than the others? The whole idea is exercise discretion, but know that there's a little more that affects Kenyans. Kenyans love politics for sure, and politics sells, and you have to do a lot. But if in a 10-day period, you have 5 days of, say, BBI or the referendum, we are doing BBI and referendum is not a crisis in this country today. And the whole idea is that knowing how hard it is to get onto the headlines, distribute it a bit. And that's why I said, the fact that tomorrow we do not have politics, well, I've seen some little thing on a headline, but at least tomorrow's headlines, all of them are about...
Let me be devil's advocate, David. It sounds like there's a call from State House or 1 or 2 people that caused you to come up with this letter, because in terms of code of conduct, if you're talking about it perhaps not having content from the headline. Headlines are there to get your attention, first of all.
Yes, definitely. Yes.
And so you disagree with the content that is covered in, perhaps in these particular stories, like Ruto headed for public clash with Raila, revolt as Ruto group resolves to go it alone, Ruto palace coup, the big BBI fallout. These, you'd say, are misleading?
I am not saying these headlines are misleading. These headlines are factual. I will say now that, for example, Ruto has been in a clash with Raila. That is not, it's an open thing, and the paper has not lied, isn't it? But if we'd say it 10 times in 15 days, then the question arises. You already said Ruto has a clash with Raila, and it's not a secret because they have exchanging words in public, isn't it?
Yes.
Unless you get the additional facts to the clash, isn't it? Why stick to the headline? That's what we say. It's discretionary and all that. Put everything in the headline, but don't and make sure that it is the only thing you keep sticking to and all that. That's the whole idea, that put any headline you want, but be balanced.
Have there been complaints? I mean, you're media council, so people have the right to complain to you. Have there been complaints from any of the political players?
No, we haven't received a complaint. I think what you saw, what you put on the split screen earlier was our just analysis of the headlines. Like we did every week, we have the Media Observer. We analyze headlines and all that, and wherever we identify patterns, we either release them in the Monday bulletin and all that. And for information, I'll tell you, for example, for us to release that statement has taken more than a week, going back and forth. At some point, then the board asked me, show us some facts, because we said that there is, if you count, say, 10 headlines, and we are not saying compare 3 papers, one paper, 10 days, 4 days, we have talking about a fallout. We think that in 10 days, 6 days, we cannot have had a developing item about the fallout alone. There was something else. So we are not saying don't cover. We're saying Kenyans have a bigger issue. And as I was saying that, for example, we are, particularly, I say that we have had, tomorrow we have no politics on the headline, because coronavirus is big, and it has been there, say, in the past 3 weeks, we have had it about 3 times, isn't it? How many times have we had politics, for example? It's big, and we are, 2 years away from the next election. How many times have we discussed the presidential 2022 in those days? And basically the whole idea is a headline attracts people, and then you open the page and get the content, isn't it? Don't put a headline and we get what we saw yesterday. If you put a headline yesterday and put the words there, for it to be a headline reworked again tomorrow, there is definitely a development, unless you say what the story we ran yesterday was very important, let us repeat it again today. And you say go 4 days, you say on Sunday, let us repeat what we ran on Tuesday, that there is a fallout. Because
is it, using the word repeat, is it really repetition?
Yes. I mean, if you put, I will put this plain, if you put the headlines here, the whole idea is, like you've talked about coronavirus, isn't it? And you said, for example, enemies of the people and all that. So we expect tomorrow in the Standard we'll see who are the enemies, what they have done compared to, isn't it?
Yes.
If you have another headline about coronavirus tomorrow, we say now you will not repeat that these are the enemies of the people. We'll say that after expose or something, and these has happened, this isn't. So because you have the same headline and repeat the content of what you said yesterday, then you are, there's something called stoking emotions, either subtly or overtly, all right? That's the whole idea. That
Let me give Rose an opportunity to respond to what she's hearing and what she's seen in the report.
Well, I haven't, it sounds like it's a study, and I haven't seen the study itself, just the statement. So I hesitate generally to tell the media what to do in terms of coverage, because I think one of the things that we've always fought for is diversity in media, and we expect that through that diversity we will get different storytellings, you know. But at the same time, I think I have noticed that there's a tendency to populate the dominant pages and the dominant news with specific people, faces, and their stories. It gets a little bit boring. I don't know. That's a personal opinion now. It's not
as a reader.
As a reader, as a consumer, it gets a bit boring. And I think what was lovely today was to hear from ordinary people dealing with coronavirus and the challenge. So I mean, I very often I feel that that's missing. The voices of ordinary people doing ordinary things that contribute to the big picture, whether it's BBI or whether it's whatever. I really miss those voices, you know, the academics and the ordinary people on the street and teachers, and, you know, what are other people thinking? Are they even interested in this, you know? For me, it's important.
Henry?
I think there are two things. I've read the statement from Media Council again and again, and one of the things that perhaps, you know, you began by asking, was there a call? And I notice that the action the statement asks of us is to just reflect. So would Omoyo and his team have received a call to tell us to reflect? Because I think that sometimes the media tends to hype certain things beyond measure. But while I have said that I do not agree with Omoyo to the extent that there is already a predetermined public interest that if you retained politics for 5 days, you need to have interchanged it with some soil sampling thing or something else.
Well, yeah, toxic flow. I mean,
yeah.
this
So on that
yeah.
end, I do not agree with him, because while public interest is nearly a term that everybody has agreed with,
yes,
it's a coterminous kind of concept. Yeah. At one point, what I see as my public interest is coronavirus, because perhaps I have a sibling or a relative who is in China, while somebody else is worried about locusts. And another person is worried about teachers not being there. Yeah. And therefore, public interest would always remain a very revolving thing. And because the headline can only be on one thing, the main headline can only be on one thing, then you have a challenge that either you're going to force media houses to have this predetermined public interest as opposed to them making a decision on it. But in his explanation, I think he's come up with more information by saying headlines not reflecting what the content we are carrying.
Okay.
Then that's a big indictment that we need to go back and ask ourselves. Have we had headlines that are not supported by the story? And this was an old thing. When I began journalism, I was told if you wanted to know yellow journalism, it's those ones that had a headline that was not supported by the story itself. And my teachers then would show me which papers to go for when you want to see that disconnect. So if that is what Omoyo is speaking to, then in asking us to reflect, he's asking us to think through and come to our professional self to understand we could have missed the ball.
Okay.
And that's like a fatherly advice or an elder sibling.
Okay.
You would not take it like it is a quarrel. He's just said, reflect.
And we have less than 5 minutes, and my director is in my ear. Just respond as you conclude on this matter, Bona Omoyo. As you explain what you want to achieve. Macharia Gaido, a contributor to this show, says, I lack the words to describe the MCK warning. Perhaps they will favor us with the specific examples of the mystery, ethical, and professional breaches complained of. They might also reveal who the complainant is.
And that is what happens, is that I was having a chat earlier in the day that our statement has spoken about urging our professional colleagues to reflect and all that. The last statement we issued, including condemning, asking for immediate action, and that we demanded actually, including sending letters and all that. And today asking our professional colleagues to reflect and all that. So what we have is, there is a call to reflect, that because we have seen better. We know the professional qualifications of people in these media houses. We have seen better because we full-time monitor content qualitatively, and we say, guys, we think you need to reflect. People, now Macharia Gaido is calling it a warning, and we said, seek the truth, report it, cause no harm. I haven't seen a warning there. You see now that immediate defensive nature becomes very tricky. I speak to about.
He also seeks to know what ethical breaches were there.
Yes, I speak, because the problem of ethics is not a law thing. You know, the problem of professional ethics is not a law thing. You're broken. It's not a black and white thing. It's about its self-regulation. That's why the second line in our statement is about we respect the discretion of the editor to decide the content.
Yes.
But we are asking you to reflect, because that was very critical in the statement. If you read that second line, is the second line
Perhaps
is
everybody is stuck with the accordingly MCK wants
yes.
The present. So that has become the focus of the entire.
Yes. And the warning was, if you see, the warning was about you breaking the law and all that. That if you do this consistently, people will feel that media is losing its touch. We did not. We urged professional colleagues to reflect and balance.
Okay.
That was basically the statement. We have not said this will not be allowed, this must be stopped. The statement is perhaps a very rare occasion for self-introspection.
What if, as they reflect, the same reflects on the headlines?
Which is, I mean, I've seen it in the headlines already. That reflection. Look at the headlines tomorrow. So we will not agree about it, but the headlines tomorrow have already changed. That okay, we think, okay, let's politics aside. we have a big issue. That's the reflection. Basically what we said, we do not say stop because we do cease and desist. We do warning letters and they are written warning. We ask, we demand for explanation.
So this is not a warning?
This was reflect professional, and it's written there. So
right.
it's about everybody, we learn to listen and reflect and all that.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Last few words, we're out of time.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's not a surprise that MCK is under fire. And I mean, I think it's to be expected when you issue a general letter like that. And I think it's perhaps not the best communication as a regular communication. I think it's to be avoided because everybody feels put upon. And, you know, are we talking to all journalists? Are there not journalists who are doing a good job every day and delivering, you know, and yet this thing kind of seems to suggest that all of us are writing, you know, I mean, everybody is carrying headlines that don't match the story and, you know, infringing on the code of conduct. So perhaps it is timely, but perhaps not the right medium.
Okay.
Perhaps not the right medium to deliver. It punishes everybody. It paints everybody with the same brush, and yes, it may be valid. It holds validity, but there are people who get up every day, do their best, make sure their work is quality, make sure that they've met all ethics, and they're also being fed the same missive.
Well, let's hope David Omoyo and the Media Council reflect on that.
Yeah, I think two things. I entirely agree with Rose and the approach. In fact, I think in our earlier discussion with Omoyo, I said if there were very specific examples to point at, then letters ought to have been written to specific media houses or specific editors because they begin to send that reflection to who needs to reflect.
Okay,
you know, sometimes the bigger we are, the more arrogant we are. So we wouldn't even be reflecting, yet this was meant for us. But on another level, he's just asked us to reflect. So let's not make it look like he's warned us. Where he has that legal capacity, that's not what he has exercised now. And asking us to reflect could be individually, could be collectively as a media house, or could be collectively as a sector.
Yes.
So he could be preparing us to call for a meeting for better reflection on this. Let's not preempt it by throwing stones at him.
Okay, thank you very much, Henry Maina. Thank you very much to Rose Lucalo and David Omoyo for your time. Let's all reflect on what we have discussed today. And yes, the issue on the coronavirus, COVID-19, will continue being a main agenda-setting aspect for the next few days, as you can expect, actually even months until we get to the bottom of this. Have a good night. Thank you for watching Press Pass.
This is NTV.
I help women find independence by training them in fish farming. It's tough on my back, joints, and can cause headaches. Panadol Extra relieves multiple types of pain.
If symptoms persist, seek medical advice. Twende holiday na spot on vacation. 2 days, 1 night for half board at Mayan Nanyuki from 10,000. 3 days Masai Mara from 13,000 with transport, accommodation, meals and game drive. 3 days Mombasa from 13,000 with SGR tickets, accommodation, transfers and meals. 5 days Dubai for 53,000 and Zanzibar from 67,000 with flights, accommodation, meals and excursions. Call us on 0741 06 5656 or visit our office on Gong Road, Gong Lane Plaza, 4th floor, or visit our website www.spotonvacation.com.
Triplets, Ghetto Kids introducing Koi Koi dance. It's a Koi Koi dance, Tusina tukola tuti, Emikono jiba jiti,
Baiskeli ya mamangu imenitenga na rafiki.
Koi Koi ologa, it's a Koi Koi dance Uganda. Koi Koi ya.
Wase. Nyinyi walafi. Hadi mwizi akikuja kuiba chakula anapata mabawa za nzi peke yake. Really.
Pola, omukulu kobe moto, tugazina botu.
With Lipa na M-Pesa, you get more.
Lipa na M-Pesa.
Every 100 shillings spent on Lipa na M-Pesa earns you an entry into the draw. Do more with Lipa na M-Pesa. This Friday, 28th February, Churchill Show returns to the heart of the city, Hilton. It's the Churchill Show Golden Edition live recording. Join Churchill and all your favorite comedians for a night of fun and laughs. Ticket goes for 2,000 shillings. Get your advance ticket by dialing *229 *29#. Friday, 28th February. It's the Churchill Show Golden Edition live recording at the heart of the city, Hilton. See you there.
NTV, turning on your world. The following program has been rated GE. It is therefore suitable for general family viewing.
This is Fact Finder from the BBC.
Coming up on today's show. Were these Chinese officials taking coronavirus victims for execution as claimed in this video? We went digging for the answers.
Will Ethiopia's new law curb the fake news menace in the East African nation? We hear from tech experts.
We'll also have tips on how you can spot a fake story online.
And are robots here to help, or will they take over the world? We find out.